Jenny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Andy. I am so excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. We met at Podcast Movement in Philadelphia a little more than a year ago. You were giving a talk in front of probably 300 people about social media and live video, I think,
Yep.
to grow your audience and grow your business. And I was taking notes like crazy and then found you in the hallway. We talked afterwards and been able to keep in touch since then. And it's cool to be able to connect now and talk to you a little bit more about what you're doing.
Yes, I am so excited to really jump into it.
Yeah, so we did an interview for your podcast where I talked all about the power of conferences, which I talk a lot about on my own podcast. We won't bore my listeners with that again today. Instead, we're going to talk more about how to, if you are an entrepreneur or one entrepreneur, a lot of my listeners are just really trying to get the most out of life and getting involved maybe with social media, maybe sharing more with people through blogs or podcasts or things like that. I know you have a lot of experience as a blogger and growing influence through social media. You've got a book coming out on the art of influencing and using those avenues. You also have a conference that you hosted for the first time earlier this year, and it's coming again to Charlotte in March, which again is called the Influencer Entrepreneurs Academy, right? So tell me a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are today.
Of course. So I started on the online space. It's 10 years ago. I had just had my first daughter, who was 6 months old, and I had lost myself as a new mother and needed a way to be creative and kind of have a space that was my own. So I started a lifestyle blog. It was called The Melrose Family. I created quick and easy recipes and projects for busy parents, and I kind of just dove into the blogging world. Attended my first conference probably about a year and a half into it. Realized there was so much more than what I actually thought was out there and ways that I could actually monetize and grow this into a business. And really, really enjoyed social media, almost to a fault, where as soon as a new platform would come out, I would jump on it and try to figure it out. So when I started 10 years ago, there was no Pinterest, there was no Instagram, there was no Google Plus, which of course now there is no Google Plus anymore. But a lot of those platforms that weren't yet there yet. And as soon as they came out, I would dive in trying to figure out a way to get more people to come over to my lifestyle blog and grow that audience to engage with them. So the Melrose Family, I actually sold last spring just before my conference because this other side of my business, jennymelrose.com, really started to take over my life, it feels like. Between the conference and coaching and masterminds that I run, I wasn't paying as much attention to the Melrose Family as I needed to. So I sold it in the spring and haven't looked back since on it.
Wait a minute. I have a question about that. And this is a question, this actually probably plays nicely into a question that I get from a lot of people about personal branding. And I've heard other people talk about this, which is the idea of, should I be working on a business as in business name, or should I be focused on my personal brand, my name? And I'm curious about your thoughts on that. And especially because you said you built up this lifestyle blog called Melrose Family and you sold it, but who could operate something called the Melrose Family when it is about you and your family?
So it's actually another mom with kids. I don't know if it was girl, boy, or what kind of kids that she had, but she took it over as me and just kind of developed the recipes. Now, when it comes to that whole personal branding, I think you need to start with, what's your end goal? Are you looking to sell the business and to walk away? Or are you looking it to be that you just want it to be kind of like your name, and you're not looking to ever try to walk away from it? Like a Michael Hyatt or a Rachel Hollis, like they are the name of their brand. They walk away. Sure, things can kind of remain going, but based on their team. But unless they get out in front again, it's going to be difficult for that brand to continue on.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important for you first to decide that. And then from there, figure out how you're going to create the content that's going to attract the right people with the problems that you're solving. And for the Melrose Family, I didn't know any better. If I had known better at that time, I would have created a name more niched, more about the content that I was going to create rather than using my name. But now we were able to sell it because the people that were coming, my audience was coming for the content. They were coming for the recipes. Yes, the story was there and they had a connection with me, but I also had a team that was helping run that. It wasn't always me writing the content.
Right.
So it almost became known as a place to just get a recipe, and you would get stories about moms and their lives.
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's trade-offs to both, right? And how you build it. And you mentioned Michael Hyatt, who I don't really follow closely, but I've listened to him a little bit. And he's actually in the process of handing that business over to his daughter,
Yes.
right? And it becomes an interesting thing when it's all the name of everything is Michael Hyatt, but then it's his daughter, I don't remember what her name is, who's running the business, and it's her business, but it's her dad's name. And of course, there have been corporations for years that are named after the founding fathers, but they're usually just the last name and not both names, so that it's easy for one person to just kind of take over. So you've been doing this for 10 years, as you mentioned, and I like what you said about trying all these different things and they come out. I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks about that all the time, and not discriminating against certain things in social media and saying like, oh, that's not for me, and trying a lot of different stuff. So where has that served you well in helping you grow your own personal brand?
It's helped me kind of understand the different ways that you can use social media and be able to engage. I think if I could go back, I would probably think about, okay, who's the audience
Right.
that is actually using the platform? A perfect example is TikTok right now, right?
Yeah.
And who knows if that'll be the case when the recording comes out, but let's just pretend. I know that my audience is not on TikTok right now.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so for me, that does not make sense to try to go over there and try to figure out that platform.
Right. Probably not Snapchat either, unless it's just to connect with their teenage children, right?
Yes. And at one point when Snapchat first came out, 5 maybe even years ago,
Yeah.
I did jump on it because I noticed that a lot of my mom friends were on there kind of creating these little videos. And I thought, wow, they're my audience. Those mom friends are looking for recipes. Maybe I can figure out a way to make it work. And then when Instagram stories came out, it totally just took over for that. There was no
Yeah.
reason to use Snapchat when Instagram stories technically was Snapchat. So deciding, what is going to actually move the needle on your business, I think is just so important. I think sometimes we focus on wanting to get on the latest and greatest, but is it where your audience is? Can you help them there is really what it needs to come back to.
Yeah, I like that. I got very lucky because I never got on Snapchat. I've never used it. And there was a point where I was like, maybe I should. And then Instagram completely like took it over. And so I just learned how to use stories, and I've been loving that. And I do that every day, and I've never had to use Snapchat, I don't think. And, going back to what you're saying about where is your audience, who do you want to talk to, whether you're building a business or you're just spreading your message, for me, I do play around on Instagram. I enjoy it, but for my business, my main audience is on LinkedIn. I'm in B2B. So I spend most of my time, my social media time, on LinkedIn every day, posting content, interacting with people, messaging with people. I think that there's value in the other places, and I try to do the same as you, like spend time on different social media platforms, try to figure them out. But for the most part, my time is on LinkedIn because of B2B. For you now, I know you've got the podcast, you've got a lot of things going on. Where do you spend most of your time now?
So I would actually say I spend a decent amount of time on Instagram stories, but it's not necessarily with the intention of my people are there, but they're not there looking for my type of content. So in other words, they're not looking to find inspirational or strategies. They're looking to just go on Instagram and, see the content coming through, the food, whatever it might be. Because most of my audience are bloggers, are influencers, are using the platform really for themselves. Same thing with Pinterest. So for me, it was the podcast, because they are listening to podcasts to gain information on strategies. That's where the majority of my clients will come from. They're normally all podcast listeners.
Let's talk about that for a second. I'm obviously a huge fan of podcasting, running 2 podcasts. I've been doing it for about 3 years. How long have you been podcasting, and what has that done for you?
Oh my goodness. The podcast, so we're at episode 146. I think yours is episode 147 that comes out in November that we will be having. So I haven't missed a single week since I started.
Nice.
That puts me at 2.5 years, right about, I think.
Okay.
did the math right real fast. Almost 3 years. And it has given me the interesting part, I guess, for podcasting for me was when I first got on there, a lot of my, again, blogger influencers weren't listening to podcasts. They didn't even know they exist. They didn't know how to use them. When you and I attended Podcast Movement, they actually, there was a keynote speaker that talked about the fact that there's some people that don't even know they had a podcasting app on their phones.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Especially if they had Android, because Google hadn't really gotten in the game yet, like Apple had.
And he showed the stats and how the growth has been so slow because podcast listeners, they just listen to all the different podcasts. It's not as easy to get as many people to come into podcasts.
Right.
It's slower growth. Well, over the past 3 years, a lot of my people are starting to hear it. They're starting to come over, and it's because they're hearing us talk about it. Instagram stories, they'll hear me talking about on the podcast. They'll hear it in my training groups. When I'm doing a training or if I'm talking about one of my courses, they'll hear me talk about the podcast, and that's where they'll start to jump into that. What it has given me is it's given me the authority, I feel like, and when I attend a conference, whether it's to speak or whether it's just to attend, people don't recognize me, the person, when they see me, they recognize the voice. I actually was sitting at a conference and asked a question in one of the speakers, and I got up to use the bathroom like shortly afterwards, and I passed by a row full of girls to get past, and they stopped me and said, "We had no idea who you were until you asked your question. The second you talked, we recognized your voice."
Right.
And I think, I have a way of talking. I talk relatively fast, and I'm kind of poignant in what I say and kind of get on my rants about certain things. And I think that it shows that sense of authority and like what you're talking about, and you want to teach and help people move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it allows you to help people, to influence people. Now you have this book coming out called Influencer Entrepreneur. Tell me a little bit about that. What does it mean? We hear the word influencer all the time, right? And I even started reading a book this morning about influencers. It didn't end up being exactly what I thought it was going to be. But we hear about this all the time, and it's something to like aspire to be now, not just an entrepreneur, but an influencer entrepreneur. What does that mean?
So the influencer entrepreneur is someone that has some sort of influence over their people, right? They can get them to do certain things, to purchase some, not even necessarily purchase, but they'll influence them to kind of start to think a certain way about things. And then that influencer entrepreneur is the one that has turned that into a business, has figured out a way to grow this audience, this people, and draw them into them so that they're helping solve a problem, that now they have a product or they have a service, or they can recommend an affiliate product or something of that nature that's going to help solve that problem that audience that they have drawn into them has. So it's really figuring out, it's this 4-part, and I love little acronyms, it's PAC. It's positioning, authenticity, confidence, and kindness. When those 4 pieces are put together, an influencer can have this business that can just grow and have such an opportunity to really help the people that they have attracted to them through those 4 things.
I love that. So you tell me that again: positioning, authenticity, curiosity, and kindness.
Confidence.
Oh,
and
confidence and kindness.
Yes.
The positioning thing is interesting. All of those are interesting to me, but I was going to ask you about the importance of choosing a niche, because people just want to put stuff out and help anybody. I've been in that position. And then when your stuff is for everybody, it ends up being for nobody, right? So talk about the importance of that positioning, of really choosing a niche for your stuff.
Absolutely. It starts with trying to figure out what makes you unique. What is it about you that is different from everyone else that's out there? So if you are a food blogger, or you're a nutritionist, or you're running your own business that's brick and mortar, what sets you apart? And a lot of times we immediately think, well, I'm like everyone else. I actually had a conversation with a client that was a budgeting consultant, and she said to me, "Jenny, I don't know how I'm different." And I just kind of looked at her and gave her a second. I said, "Okay, how many kids do you have again?" And she looked at me and she goes, "Jenny, I have 10 kids. You were one of the first people."
What?
that I was pregnant with my 10th. And I said, and where do they go to school again? And she got frustrated with me. Jen, I homeschool them. And I just kind of sat there and let the silence get awkward, waiting for her to put it together. And she looked at me and goes, oh, I'm a homeschooling mom of 10 kids that does budgeting and can have a budget of $200. Literally, she spends $200 a week on groceries for a family of 12. I was like, yes, that's it. That's all that you need to say.
Everybody does that. No big deal.
Right? And that's the thing. We're so often so close to it because it's what we've always done. It's who we are.
We don't think whatever we're doing is special, right? Anybody can do this, whatever it is, right?
And that's often what draws people to you is what makes you unique. Yeah. What is it that your expertise is? And how you can truly show that to them so that you can attract those right people to you. And a lot of times you need to be able to niche down by figuring out who that avatar is or who that ideal client is going to be for you. And when you niche down to that and know who that person is, you'll start attracting those types of people to you. For me, I know that being a former teacher, that's who my audience is. Like I attract a ton of teachers, whether they are former teachers or teachers now, because I'm very strategic in the way that I teach. And they just relate to me. They know my experiences. I always tell the story that when I start to speak, and I don't know if you remember me saying this, but I had said every time, it calms me down when I say it, when I start speaking, is feel free to ask any questions because I'm a former inner city school district teacher that's used to dodging chairs. So I'm fine with adults asking me questions.
Yes.
And they relate to that automatically, whether they were inner city or not. Those teachers, they are hooked to me. And those are the ones that become those are my super fans, as Pat Flynn would say.
Yeah. And I just finished reading that book, Super Fans, by the way. And your audience is also not only teachers or former teachers, but usually moms as well, right? So you niche and you connect with your audience. And choosing a niche, the scary thing for people is that it means that you turn people away and you're starting out. You don't want to possibly turn people away, but it gives you more strength, right? And actually, you and I were messaging before we got this, and you said you were hosting a conference and it was about influencer entrepreneurs. And I was like, that sounds cool. I'd like to come to that. And you basically said, in a nice way, this is not for you. Right?
Unless you want to be the only man in the room.
Right.
I know you have to know who your people are. And the interesting thing is you will have outliers. I'm not going to say that I've worked with males, but I'm primarily speaking to females because I'm going to talk about my kids. And I'm going to talk about the things that I have kind of had to overcome as a woman. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different the way that I'm going to approach sales compared to maybe the way that a man would.
Right.
And I think that that's important. And knowing that when you cast that huge net where you're just trying to attract everyone, you're actually going to get a lot less when you actually really hone in on that ideal person. You'll have outliers. There are absolutely people in my audience that are in their late 60s that don't have any kids and never did.
Right.
But there was something about me, about my style, the way that I talked, the way that I taught them the material that attracted them to me. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. If they come, great, but you focus in on that niche. And that's the other thing. People get scared of turning people away. I guess I shouldn't say turning people away, but by choosing a niche, it doesn't mean that you can't work with other people. And in fact, I tell the story of how when I started getting into coaching, I thought I wanted to be a coach. And I said, I'm going to focus on dads because that's what I relate to, the dad who wants to get the most out of life. And then I went to this conference and my first big client I met was a woman with no kids. And she hired me to help her as her business coach. And I was like, this is not who I was targeting, but it's who came my way at the time. And just because I defined my niche as dads doesn't mean I can't work with a woman. Now you said a lot of stuff about, we were talking about positioning and niche. The second thing is authenticity. And this is a kind of a buzzword now, but it's a big one for me. I am really focused on this. I always want to be 100% authentic, transparent. I think it's what people want. But the tension may be in that, when you choose this niche and you're trying to create some great stuff for people that often people will try to be someone that they're not. So tell me about the importance of authenticity.
Yeah. So I think that once you decide on your positioning, it helps to stay in that authentic lane for yourself. This comes to the point where you're either choosing products that you want to work with or that you want to talk about, or you're creating a product yourself. But also one of the things that I often will use on social media is I use Instagram stories, and stories really about showing your heart, showing like what your beliefs are. When you're authentic, you can't just be authentic with your content. You need to be authentic about your life as well, especially if you're a personal brand and you're trying in any way, you're trying to work one-on-one with people, or even if you have a digital course that you want to sell, they have to know, like, and trust you, because if that's not there, they're not going to purchase anything. So in order for that to happen, you have to be able to share a little bit more about yourself. So, for example, on Instagram stories, I will often talk about things that are related to my coaching, related to my products, related to a lead magnet, whatever it might be. But I'm also going to talk about my daughters, where it relates to the idea of being a mom and the struggles that they may be having to overcome. I'm not necessarily going to get on and start talking about bullying that maybe my daughter is dealing with, because that isn't quite in line with my brand. But what I will get on and do and talk about is how it was really important for me in 2018 to take a step back on the number of conferences that I was speaking at, because every time I left, my kindergartner at that time would have issues with stuttering because I was leaving, and then it was like the stuttering came up, and then 2 weeks back later she'd get back into a rhythm, and then I would leave again and the stuttering would come back. So I had to make a decision at that time and put my family first. And I think that that's something that we as women have to hear, and the reasons of why we're doing it. So that was authentic to my brand, to me, to my audience. And one of the pieces of being authentic is not always just showing the highlight reel. Don't
Yeah.
show them that it's just unicorns and
Right.
rainbows. It's not believable. And even if it is, even if they do start to believe it, they're going to actually, it goes from looking at you as someone that's really good at what they do to almost starting to be envious and jealous to feeling inadequate
Yeah,
themselves,
they're
because
intimidated.
yes, they can't accomplish what you're showing and putting out there, because let's be honest, that's not the truth. You
Right.
don't have white furniture that you let three boys climb all over and eat popsicles on. Like, that's
Right.
not how it works. Come on.
Yeah.
Even though you want to show that and show me how it's picture perfect at your house all the time.
Right. Yeah. It's so important. And people do want to do business with someone they know, like, and trust. And when they really get to know who you are, then they're like, oh, it makes them want to work with you more, makes them trust you more. When someone seems perfect, they seem intimidated by you. And so, being vulnerable, which I still struggle with, but I try hard to be completely open on things like that, because I know that when others share those things, it's what bonds us instead of them trying to be perfect. And actually, a great example of what you're talking about, we talked on your podcast about how I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, but I do Instagram stories all the time and kind of share what's going on with my life authentically. And this woman, again, not in my target demographic, just reached out to me recently, said, I've been following you on Instagram. I love everything you're doing. I want to learn more from you. Can I hire you as a coach? And we just spoke, and she's now becoming a client because of the way I just put my authentic self out there on Instagram. And someone said, I want to learn more from you and how you're doing the things that you're doing. And I wasn't trying to be anybody that I wasn't. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just trying to let people in and inspire people, which is stories. The whole point is to give them behind the scenes look anyway, right?
Right. That's exactly right. And just show them what you truly believe and where your values are, because that's what's going to get that know, like, and trust factor are your values, not even what services you offer, but the values that are behind that, I think, is what
Mm.
really draws people in and attracts them to you.
Yeah. Now the next thing you have on there is confidence. And I I don't know if this connects to another question I want to ask you, but as we get into all this stuff about sharing and building your influence, I think the number one thing that holds people back, and one of my favorite subjects to talk about, is fear, right? Fear of judgment. What if I put things out there and people don't like it? They think that I'm stupid, or, that what I'm doing is not impressive. What if I get criticized for it? Does that connect to the confidence piece? How do you get past that to share your authentic self?
Yes. So the confidence piece is a huge issue. And as I've said, a lot of my audience are all primarily females. And we, in my membership site, have really been focusing on the other piece of kindness, but also it goes back to this whole idea of confidence, being confident in yourself. For a lot of us, I know for me as a female, growing up, I played sports. I played college basketball, scored 1,000 points. It wasn't something that you talked about. It was almost like if you talked about it, you were boasting. Whereas I would be at a family event and so-and-so did whatever at baseball and he's a boy and everybody's bragging and boasting and talking about it. But it wasn't talked about for me because that was seen as something that a girl didn't do. And I think for especially my age group of almost into their 40s, that's how we grew up. Like you were supposed to be mild-mannered and you weren't supposed to speak up a ton. So the confidence thing can be hard for a lot of us. And I think that it comes down to you have to fake it until you make it. And I know you go back and you're like, wait, you just said be authentic. And I'm not saying show like you have this Lamborghini out front that you rented for 5 minutes to be able to like take a picture next to. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about fake it as far as the way that you believe in yourself. Affirmations, meditation. And I know these are things that you believe in because I've watched your stories and I know you use the same app I do for meditation.
Nice.
You have to do those things to really, it's as an entrepreneur in general, it's a roller coaster ride. You have all of a sudden this really, you're up, and then all of a sudden you're crashing down because something didn't go the way that it was supposed to. In order for you to be able to get back on that upswing, you just have to be able to find a way to believe in yourself and to be confident about it. And I feel like fake it until you make it is just a huge piece of it. A lot of my clients will say to me, well, I'm trying to work with a sponsor to come onto my podcast, but I've never done it before. How can I tell them? I'm like, you just need to know your value. What is it that you can provide them with? If you want sponsorships for your podcast, you need to be able to articulate what the value is, what's going to be the return on investment for that. Who are your readers? What are they coming to you for? And is it the audience that sponsor is looking to reach? So it really comes down to just knowing your data and knowing who you are. And it's a little bit of self-love, like really liking the person that you are, which is hard for a lot of us, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's hard for a lot of people, men or women. I've done a lot of inner work, a lot of work on that, a lot of meditation, mindfulness, personal development work to get to the place where I love myself and I'm very confident putting things out there. But it also takes a lot of courage. And sometimes I think the authenticity can be married with that. And when you are scared to put stuff out there and you say that, you tell people like, I'm really nervous about this. It's like when you start the presentation, why I'm really nervous about this. People connect with that. They don't judge you. They're like, oh, I would be too. I totally get it. And now you've built that bond.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. And I think the other piece of when it comes to confidence is manifesting, right? Thinking about what it is that you ultimately want and believing that it can come true, believing that it can be a piece of it. It's another just all of the confidence of knowing that you can do it.
All right, let's finish with this kindness piece. It's so important. Being kind, generous, helping others. It's hard for a lot of us who think, oh, I'm not naturally that generous or kind. I'm just trying to take care of myself. Why is this so important?
I believe that we're not in competition. I have a mindset of there isn't scarcity. I'm going to live in abundance. And when I live in abundance and know that I'm going to go out and help people and the people that I affect are going to be able to help others. And I'm not in competition with someone that does something similar to me because I'm not going to reach the people that she reached. They're not going to be attracted to me and I can be okay with that. That's when you really see a difference. You see a ripple effect of what you have done and what you can do. And I think especially in a day and age where so many people, we see trolls, we see the things that go on social media, things get put up there so quickly without people thinking and hiding behind computer screens, that just taking a second and thinking, okay, this is a real person. And if someone's reacting to you a way in which you're not sure why, there's probably something going on in their lives as to why they're reacting that way. And if you just give them kindness back, that's all that you can do. And know that it's not about you. I think a lot of us will take it personally and will lash back out and, say something that could maybe affect them even worse than where they're already at. You just need to know that what is it? I always mess up the quote about the boats, lifting all boats.
Rising tide raises all boats.
Yes, rising tide raises all boats. Exactly. I just think it's going to help. You help one, it's going to help another.
Yeah, I have been big on this lately too, in this mindset of abundance. And I think, first of all, I think it's just a happier way to live when you're just like, I'm going to help everybody, and I know it's going to come back to me. And I see so many people that are very scarcity minded, that are protective of potential clients or knowledge or information or territory. I'm not going to tell you how I built this or what I'm doing because I'm afraid that you might go and do it better and take my clients away. When, like you said, there's an unlimited amount of success, amount of clients, amount of knowledge, amount of everything out there. And the more you help others, the more they're going to help you. And so I love that you're out there sharing all the time. I try to do the same thing. I did a podcast episode the other day about all the things that we did to sell out the conference that I'm hosting. And I thought about it afterwards. I was like, some people might not do that because they might think, oh, I'm releasing all my secrets. But no, I want to help everybody with this because, first of all, they're going to do it differently than I would anyway. And going back to what you said about positioning and, confidence of being yourself, no one can do it like me, and no one can do what you're doing like you, because you are you and nobody's youer than you, right, Jenny?
That's right. And you're going to attract those that you're meant to attract to you. And maybe they're meant to go to a different type of conference where now that information is going to be able to get in front of them because you shared your strategies. It really is about being able to just put it out there and know that the right people will come to you.
Yep. All right. Tell me quickly about your conference and then we'll wrap things up.
Absolutely. So it is March 31st through April 2nd in Charlotte, North Carolina. We set it. So it's called Influencer Entrepreneurs Academy. And the idea behind it is my speakers present for 45 minutes. And then what happens afterwards is they have put together an activity that takes the strategies that they taught, and now the attendees are going to do that activity and apply it to their business. So instead of leaving a conference with 1,000 notes and not knowing what did I take away, what did they say, what does that even mean that I wrote down, it's implemented into their business before they even leave. And what we do is we actually take all of our attendees, we put out all of our information, and prior to them arriving, we put them into mastermind groups. So I'm placing them strategically so that it's not everyone and their best friend sitting at a table. I'm going to mix it up so that different niches are together. They have different strengths. I'm going to take a look at their social media numbers. I'm going to take a look at their blog information because we ask a ton of questions of our attendees just so that we can make sure that we strategically put them where they need to be.
Holy cow. I love that idea. First of all, I've been looking for something like that and been planning to put together something like that because what you said, you go to all these conferences, you listen to speakers, you got a ton of notes, and you get back and you get into the business. There's hardly any time to implement, and you forget most of it. And then you go on with the thing. And then most people don't do much with the knowledge. And there's also not enough time to network, to interact with people. And you're creating that interactive environment, which is what I'm trying to do with my talent development think tank conference. And I've been talking with a friend about putting together an entrepreneur type conference that is like that. So I'm so glad you have this abundant mindset because I'm going to steal everything that you just said.
I love it.
And go run my own.
No, absolutely. And that's exactly the way that it should be done is you find things that work for you and your personality and put it into practice. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it would be, of course, different speakers, different style. I mean, it would still be completely different. And
yes.
I love it. I love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. Where can people go to follow you and find out more? And I know you have a book coming out as well.
Yes. So the podcast is Influencer Entrepreneurs with Jenny Melrose. It's all on your favorite listing apps, of course. Nice. Instagram stories, you can find me, or Instagram, I should say, at Jenny_Melrose. And the book is coming out in April, which I'm very, very excited about. And there's also a Jenny Melrose app. So that if you're looking to get all of the information in one place, you can find it. We're actually in your app store for all iOS devices. And it has all the podcasts in one place, all the articles you can search through, find the specifics of what you're looking for, and not miss anything with all the algorithms that are happening on social media. It's all in one spot.
You have your own app. You are a big time influencer. Wow. Look at this. This is
I knew
amazing.
what my audience needed. They kept saying to me, I didn't know you had this, and I didn't know you had this, and I didn't know you had this. So I said, okay, fine. Here, we're going to put it all in the app, and now you can't say you didn't know you had it.
I love it. Listening to your audience and putting stuff like that. Now I have something to aspire to. Jenny, this has been great. So much great knowledge, information for me that's helpful. And I know it will be for a lot of our listeners as well. So thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Andy, for having me.
All right. Take care.